everybody. Welcome to Shires TV. My name is Samantha Lane. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for SE Shires. We have been having a total blast with these Shires TV episodes. It started maybe over a month ago with a couple short interviews and things that we were doing online. And we have so many great artists and so many great clinicians and people that we get to work with that we thought we have the opportunity to broadcast some of this stuff live to you guys. Here's Don Lucas. We're going to add him in right now. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to show off some of our people and talk about some great topics to cover and discuss. So today we're going to be talking about trombone teaching, both as a student in terms of if you have questions about if you're a high school student or a college student, you have questions. Also, if you're a teacher and you're looking to grow a studio, if you want to know what it takes to be a career private lesson instructor, if you're a band director and you have questions about brass pedagogy. So there's a bunch of stuff that we're going to try to cover tonight. And if you have questions, I'll suggest that you shoot them down in the comment section. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Feel free to let us know and we'll try to work them in. But without further ado, I'd like to just let you guys know who is on our panel for this evening. Very illustrious panel. I'm very thrilled that everybody's able to join us today. Let's see, in alphabetical order, we have Bobby Guess. He is a bass trombonist, teacher, clinician, performer. He's from Katy, Texas. We have Professor Don Lucas, who is the professor of trombone at Boston University, and he also is the trombone instructor at Boston University Tanglewood Institute. Don has left the room. And we have Tim Riordan, who is the trombone teacher at the Merit School of Music in Chicago, and Ken Wolff, who is an educator and clinician. He's principal trombone in Capital Wind Symphony, and he teaches at Catholic University. And he also runs a pretty amazing collective called the Washington Brass Institute. So what I'll do, since all of these guys have such great stories really about what it is that they do and the students that they work with, I'll turn it over to each of them just to fill us in a little bit about who they are and what they do. And then we'll start getting to some questions. So if you have questions, pop them in the comments and we'll keep going. So Bobby, you're up, buddy.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam.
Yeah.
Man, this is an awesome opportunity. I'm Bobby Guess. I just officially today at 12:05 Central Time finished my 26th year of being an educator in the state of Texas. Like many people, students, I started in 6th grade band playing trombone. I wanted to play trumpet. That did not work out very well for
poor
me.
Bobby.
Even though I did want to, that didn't work out. So moved to trombone. Into high school, hooked up with some awesome people from the University of Houston, the late Al Luby. I got to study with him. And that totally changed my course as far as fundamentals and my understanding of how trombone should be. Moved on to University of Houston. That's where I met Don Lucas the first time. We were there. And one of the great things that helped me as a teacher, not just as a player, is teaching private lessons. I worked at Fuddruckers when I was in high school. And then when I had the opportunity to teach private lessons, I went, wow, that's a whole lot more money than working at Fuddruckers. But not just the money side of it, diagramming and dissecting my students' problems helped me become a better player myself and become a better teacher to really understand what each individual person wants and needs. Mr. James Monahan is one of my former students, and I taught him, right before he left Langham Creek to go on to college. And anyway, I've been an educator in this part of Texas for my entire career, and I had many opportunities to play. I was played at Disney in the college program. I got to study with the late George Roberts, which was another turning point in my life. And we just had awesome people that have sat down and really diagrammed all of the things that I need to work on as an individual that have really made me who I am now, and now I can pass those on to my students. So I tell them all the time that they are grand students of my teachers, just like I'm a grand student of my teachers' teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's it. Thanks so much.
I like that a lot. The whole family aspect of what it is that we do. So we're having a couple technical difficulties in terms of sound, so we're going to skip over Don Lucas for alphabetical order for the moment. Hey, Tim Riordan.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah. All right. So I'm Tim Riordan. I teach at the Merit School of Music in Chicago. I guess my history with trombone is my grandfather gave me a trombone when I was 7 years old, and just said, "Pucker up your lips, kid, like you're gonna kiss a girl." And that's the only instruction I had until I was able to join band when I was like 9 years old. And I was fortunate to have a really good band program, but no private lessons until I was a senior in high school. And I was going to go to a small state school. I was thinking about music education or trombone. And, uh, you know, I can remember my mom called up the Chicago Symphony and asked the box office if they could give her the phone number of the trombone player in the orchestra. And that's how little my family knew about music. We had no clue
Wow.
what kind of pathway to get to music. We had no idea what conservatories were or anything. And fortunately, she was able to get through to Frank Crisafulli, who was the Chicago Symphony for most of his life. And he was nice enough to take me on as a student my senior year.
So that actually
And
worked.
it actually worked. Well, they told her that he worked at Northwestern, and that's how we got through to the number. But the guy changed my life. He basically said, "Hey, you don't know anything." Like, I was on a small bore trombone. Like I was like on a Bach 36 at one point. I mean, just like this very small, old, crummy horn. And I wound up, I didn't know how to read tenor clef, and I didn't know how to do anything, just very, very uneducated. But I really worked hard and I loved it. And anyway, I wound up going to Eastman and studying with John Marcellus. And when I got out of school, I took a couple of one-year positions with some orchestras. I was in the Northwest Indiana Symphony for a while, and I just did not like it at all, which is really weird. You spend your whole life saying you want to be a professional trombone player. Like, I didn't like being in an orchestra, but I was teaching some students on the side, just like I think Bobby said, just to kind of make some money. And I found myself being way happier teaching students than going to my orchestra rehearsals. And every time I had to like cancel a student to go to a gig or something like that, I'd be very sad to miss the lesson. So anyway, I essentially have spent my entire career trying to create pathways for kids who don't have, parents in music or
Right.
a clear understanding or great teaching to help them get to where they want to go. And so that's why I work at Merit. Merit's dedicated to removing economic barriers to participation in music. I teach a lot of kids who are very poor and who don't have access to music education in the city. So I work with a lot of kids for whom this is their only activity, their only time that they ever get to work with a teacher. And I've been a lot of people say, how do you do that? Like, that's, that must be so hard. And I'm like, no, the kids don't compete with soccer or horseback riding lessons or anything else. So anyway, that's been my career. I spent about 20 years at Merit. I've been teaching for about 25, and I love it. And I've just taken, a job at Northern Illinois University, and I've been teaching the last few years at Vandercook College, teaching future music educators how not to screw up teaching trombone to kids. So anyway, there you go.
Awesome, man. Hey, Ken, let's turn it over to you next.
Thanks, Sam. Before I start, I need to sort of pay homage to those who got me here, and like all of you guys who mentioned your teachers. I was fortunate to study with, at age 12, I started off studying with Ed Neumeister, who is a Shires artist now. And then he left town, and I went to study with Mitchell Ross, and then he left town, and then I went to study with Ned Meredith, who was second trombone in San Francisco Symphony. And then my senior year, I got to study with Mark Lawrence, who's also a Shires artist. My senior year, and he told me if I had stayed another 6 months, he would have left town too. Then I was spent some summers studying with John Marcellus, who you all know, and and then finally ended up studying with and befriending Dave Sporney, who became sort of my mentor and the inspiration for my career as a teacher, because he started off teaching this age group when he was teaching at the Interlochen Arts Academy. And he's also a Shires artist, of course. So there's a little theme in here, I think. But anyway, I really loved playing, and I wanted to be a chamber musician because I was playing professionally from the age of 14. I was playing in the Rich Martini Big Band in San Francisco, which was the #1 big band in the city. We were booked a year and a half out. I was playing with the San Francisco Dixie Company, who was going everywhere. I was playing with a Chicago cover band. I was playing with a punk rock group called Eye Protection, and then of course doing lots of orchestra, and to me, I couldn't get locked into one concept of playing. So I wanted to do chamber stuff, and I really wanted to play for Empire Brass Quintet. And then the day after the audition, I broke my collarbone and ended up in a brace. And Sam Palafian, may rest in peace, looked at me and said, go to the hospital. When I went to the hospital and found out it was broken, and he said, you're going to learn euphonium this summer. Tough break, kid. So there went that opportunity. So I did a lot of freelancing and a lot of playing and did a little bit of teaching, but wasn't really interested. I ended up having a family in teaching at the time, had a family, and ended up here in Rockville, Maryland, which is outside of DC. And the two trombone teachers who taught most of the kids in and around the county in this area retired within a month of each other, and there were no trombone teachers. I happened to be friends with one of the middle school band directors here, who was formerly the principal percussionist with the Israel Philharmonic, and had moved back here, and he just begged me to teach trombone. So I opened up a private studio, and I started to get a couple of kids, and I realized really quickly that I had no idea what I was doing. And that I had spent all my time listening to my teachers help me be a better trombone player, but I never asked myself why they told me what they were telling me to do, or why they structured things the way they structured things. And so I realized I had to start over and learn how to be a teacher by listening to why great teachers chose what they chose. So when I developed the Washington Brass Institute, which I'll talk a little bit about maybe later, my goal was to invite all the greatest trombone players that I could find and have them come do master classes and listen to what they had to say. And I quickly learned that if you steal from one, it's plagiarism, but if you steal from many, it's research. So I copied them all down. And Don Lucas, I'd like to say, has been one of those people who came through here, and I still have a couple pages of notes from that visit, and I've gone out to hear him teach at Tanglewood and so forth. And what I realized is not only do you have to have lots of knowledge to be a great teacher, but that you have to have community. And that'll probably be the biggest part of my theme today, is the community that exists within the studio here. And even among other teachers. Tim and I have become extremely close as friends, and as we have with other teachers, and we've begun to build a teacher community too, so that we can support each other and help grow. And then I was recently appointed as adjunct faculty to teach tenor trombone at the Catholic University of America here in DC, just in time for it not to open up in the fall.
Right, yeah, of course. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hey, Don, do you think your audio is working at this point?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. This is by phone because I get no sound out of my computer. And
you can hide non-video participants so that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
we're actually okay on the live stream, Ken.
Okay. So and after 2 months of doing virtual everything, including our big VidCon conference this last weekend, everything just kind of didn't work as a present for today. I was like, no.
Well,
okay,
bro, it's working. Thank you.
Yeah, could you repeat the question? Although I think I know what it is.
I think we were just chatting about like a short little synopsis of who you are and what do you do as a teacher. Because then we're going to get through some questions. We had some questions that were written in, and then also I have some questions to kind of lead us through a discussion. But first, just a couple minutes about you and your career and your teaching.
Okay. I grew up in Falls Church, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C. And I remember seeing the high school band, which was one of the best bands in the country. They came to my elementary school, and the first year trumpet and first year trumpet stood up and played an amazing solo. And these guys just weren't really good. They were truly amazing. They were first year all-state trumpet and first year all-state trombone. And Chris Bodis, the trombone player, was 3 years first year all-state trombone. And several people were till it got to me. But my first lessons were with Dave Mazur. By the way, when the high school band played and these two guys did their duet, trumpet and trombone, I was just, wow. And then I just remember just going, that's what I want to do. And I started with Dave Mazur. He was soloist in the U.S. Army Band Pershing Zone, but before that, he had played a little bit with Dorsey, with Jen Savitt, Artie Shaw, and a bunch of other big bands. He was principal of the Kansas City Symphony. Then he was principal of North Carolina Symphony, and then he auditioned for soloist in the U.S. Army Band. What did I get from him other than 7 years worth of everything teaching? The love of music and a really clear delineation between styles. I went to college, studied with Leon Brown and Wayne Musselwhite at North Texas State University, then called University of North Texas now. And then I did a summer session with Phil Wilson, College of Music. I then transferred to Texas Tech and had Robert Deal, who was amazing, an amazing musician and had amazing encouragement. I went and traveled a little bit with American Wind Symphony, had different experiences, chamber music, large ensemble things and solos, etc. And then I applied for a Fulbright scholarship and was blessed with that to study on a Fulbright at the Guildhall School of Music with Dennis Wick. During that time, also took a lot of lessons with Michelle Becquet. Came back, my dad had a heart condition, so I stayed in the Washington, D.C. area. Along the way, I had several lessons with John Marcellus, who told me, especially in the high range, not to overload it with too much air or I will blow my chops apart, and thus the idea of quantity air relationship. I then came back from the Fulbright, took care of my dad, taught public school in Virginia, North Carolina, and then in Texas. Ended up doing played in St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, auditioned for 3 seasons, then did doctoral work at the University of Houston, studied with Alan Barnhill, principal of the Houston Symphony, and off and on for many, many years in Texas and in New Jersey, studied with Al Luby, who had been the principal trombone of the Houston Symphony. And while I was at University of Houston, I met some wonderful characters like Bobby Guess there, and I was a teaching assistant with the band and also with trombone. And then I taught public school and then applied for a 1-year position at Eastern New Mexico University, taught there, went back in public school for a year, taught at Texas Tech, my alma mater, for many years, and I've been many years here at Boston University.
That was a pretty succinct bio, actually.
For me?
Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff to work in. It's good.
I've been accused of being diatribetic, and I thought that was originally a cough syrup, but can't stop talking.
Well, hey, let's get started with some questions, if that's okay with you guys. And I'll pitch these questions, and feel free to respond. You don't have to respond to everything, but if you've got something you want to add, please do. So let's start a little bit about like developing your studio. So Don is in a slightly different position because of the college sector, but he's still, reaching out and doing some working with students who are like auditioning and taking lessons with them and stuff. But how do you develop a studio as a private teacher? I think this is going to be a little bit geographically specific, but I mean, who wants to take a stab at it first?
I'd be more than happy to, because I basically had to build up from the bottom. So I think developing good relationships at the outset with band directors is good way to get things going. I was fortunate enough to go back and work for the band program that I went to as a kid. I think developing good relationships with youth symphonies and getting, doing good work. I think word of mouth is really important. I think, like I said, being consistent with lessons is extremely important. Not undervaluing your work, making sure you're paid for what the knowledge that you bring, while at the same time making sure that you look for opportunities to bring more, as much as you can, to the to the student's life. I know Ken and I have both, even during this current crisis, have added on things for our private students, because it feels sometimes like there's that sense of community is missing. So even now we're trying to reinvent some things. So we're doing weekly masterclasses with my studio. I know Ken's doing that with his, where we're all just getting together, bringing in guests, but also just time with us, so the kids can see each other. So I know Ken is probably going to talk to you about community later, but I think that establishing that sense of community early is a great way to build your studio.
Yeah.
So,
and what else do you have on that?
I guess what I have to add to that is actually a precursor. In many ways, those of you who are thinking that you're going to have a career as a professional trombonist, a freelancer, or you're going to work in Hollywood, you're going to work in salsa or commercial or chamber or orchestra or whatever, and you want to make some money along the way and you want to do a teaching, but your priority is to be available to make your gigs, to accept them every time they come up, and to travel for every opportunity that's available, and to end up rescheduling some of your lessons or a good number of your lessons. Don't do it. And the reason that I say that is, if you think about it, when a child goes through elementary, middle, and high school, they're going to meet a lot of teachers, and those teachers are going to become the most influential adults in their lives outside their relationship with their parents. Out of all of their teachers, there's only one teacher who they're going to be one-on-one with, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of their life for an hour at a time. No other teacher will they be that way with. They might be on a team with a tennis coach for 3 years, or in an English class where they get the same English teacher 2 or 3 times in a class of 30. But the music teacher is the only one that you're one-on-one with for such a long time. And the profound impact that this individual can make on the life of that child is enormous. I can say that 50% of the work that I do has nothing to do with the mechanical business of playing the trombone. It's about learning about life, about respecting parents, about respecting teachers, about getting good grades, about being okay when the wrong person asks you to the prom, or the right person says no, or you're a little bit different for somebody else, or you've really had no identity as a person until the instrument was in your hand. And now that you're doing so well, how do I find the person without the instrument and make that connection? If you constantly change, or just phone it in, or sit there and let them get through a lesson and then give them a star for a B-flat scale, you are in a position to so negatively impact that child that you just need not do it. This is a serious priority. This is not an also-ran. This is not, I'm a player and I teach on the side. This is, I'm a player and I'm a teacher. Nice. And that's critically important.
If I can just add one thing to that too, which is the thing that makes music great. I don't think any one of the 4 of us or people watching who when asked to describe why they love music, none of them would say, oh, because it was easy, or because my teacher told me I was great. It's because of the hard work over many years, and what Ken is saying is really important. If you're going to teach music, you need to teach what it actually is, which is, delayed gratification for a lot of hard work put in up front. And that's what it is. And if you're not willing to sometimes look a student in the eye and say, you didn't do your best, and because you're worried about, well, how am I going to get that paycheck for the next kid? What if they go and complain to their parent? We have to step into the fray. Good teachers are always stepping in and saying, this is not your best work. And that's extremely important. And you can't do that if you're not there every week to watch their progress. So that'd be my 2 cents on what Ken said too.
You know, I'd like to jump. Go ahead, Don.
Bobby, you're up. You're up, Bobby.
You know, I can speak for a lot of every educator out there. One thing that I like to start my year with every year with my students and my families is I make them very aware that we're using music to teach life skills. We're not teaching students music. I mean, that's a tool that I'd use to teach life skills. Do they turn out to be an amazing player? Awesome, cherry on the top. But if they turn out to be a great human being, then that's a win to me. And if I used music to teach them those skills along the way, absolutely win-win. You know, music is a very humbling thing. You know, I can say when I was in high school, Al Luby asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to be a professional trombone player. And his reaction was, and he just put his head down and shook his head and he goes, let me just give you some pointers. And I said, yes, sir. And so, you know, and with his parents being vaudeville entertainers, you know, he had been all around. And he said, be a teacher because teachers are what dictate the future of children and people. Then you can play on the side and pursue that. But if you're a great teacher, you're always going to, you know, answer the call of what that human being needs. And, you know, every person needs a release. And we know a lot of people now, especially now, that are looking for, what is my release? I just got home from the hospital and, you know, what is my release? What is that thing? Is it going to the fridge and drinking? Is it picking up my horn and playing some notes? Is it a guitar? Is it watching Netflix? Whatever. But every human being, that human spirit needs a release from their everyday challenges.
Yeah. Don, you were going to add in.
I agree with everybody that's here and that's spoken. I'm getting a lot of feedback and an echo.
Okay, let's see. You want to try it again, Don?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I think we're better now.
Okay, I can't hear you, but you're nodding that you're hearing me, so I'll pretend that it's all working good.
Uh-oh.
You know, when I was in high school, I wasn't like half of the people that wanted to go into music or the other half, because they had kind of said to themselves, okay, I just want to play. No, okay, I just want to teach. And I always felt, what's wrong with me, because I want to do both. And there was nothing wrong with me because they're different sides of the same thing. Now, there was a New York critic many years ago that supposedly said those who can't teach. And my gosh, that attitude has unfortunately pervaded with a lot of different musicians that have been around, and actually with some teachers, which falls into a lot of Ken's comments about investing in someone's life. But I just got through reading about a month ago, and I'm reading a long time, a past colleague of mine, Terry Cook, a great cellist who was at Texas Tech and has been teaching at Longee School of Music here in Boston. And he gave me a signed copy of a huge biography about Grigor Piatigorsky, the famous cellist. He's probably as famous as Pablo Casals and the front line. And in there, he mentioned that somebody had quoted to him, no, you're going to have to be a lot better musician and a lot better performer if you're going to teach, and that the teaching was the highest end of it. So it's a combination of doing that. Like Ken said, we're investing in our students' lives. And when I was starting as an undergraduate, I was told by my mentors at that time, not Mr. Mazur, that, well, you should have some insurance. And the insinuation was, so when you fail as a player, you can always fall back on teaching. Well, first of all, if you've already decided you're going to fail as a player, that's a whole different thing, and we won't go into that. That's just wrong, wrong, wrong. But then it's really wrong, probably even more so, to fall back on teaching. You're not falling back on teaching. You're falling back on people, students, kids, young adults. And in my studio, I'll finish with this part here. I've got some framed things of many teachers and need to frame some more of the hang up. And and I've got some successes that are there, some diplomas and some other things. And it has to be the right moment, but I will share with the student, you have no idea what these people have invested in my life. And I mentioned many, many, many others because I just got stuck with so many great people who invested in my life. And am I going to stop that flow by not paying it forward? Or am I going to talk like I'm all that when everything I've been given by all of them? There's no way. So it's truly investing in their lives, as my colleagues have said.
So that brings another point that's important. First of all, we never know what happens in our lives. I'd mentioned one of my teachers, David Sporney, I believe he's probably on this, watching this today, but when he got out of college, he won a position with the Dallas Symphony, I believe it was, and maybe Honolulu or one of the other major orchestras, and got invited on the road with a big band. But his father said, hey, you know, your draft number's low and you're going to be in Vietnam in a week if you don't take a draft deferrable job like teaching. And 24 hours later, he's auditioning for Interlochen. You don't know what will happen to you that changes your life. But that being said, there are tremendous numbers of great players out there. And excuse me, I won't mention any names so that I don't insult anybody, but are horrible teachers. The teaching is its own skill. And just because you win a job with the terrific East Jabib Symphony Orchestra does not make you the world's biggest authority on teaching trombone. Because guess what? None of us here teach trombone. We've been trying to teach the trombone for a long time and the trombone hasn't learned anything. We teach people. And there is a skill to being an educator that comes with lots of experience. And experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So it takes a while. Spending hours in the practice room and winning a big job does not turn you into the world's greatest teacher tomorrow. And so if you want to do this, you need to invest in teaching and in the knowledge it takes to be a good teacher. The greatest master classes that we have often come from college professors who've dedicated their lives to teaching, and folks like Tim, not necessarily, you know, from the guy who or gal who just won the big job in the big orchestra. So we know that teachers do it for the outcome, not the income. And to get the outcome, there takes a lot of knowledge, a lot of caring, and a lot of investment in people.
Yeah. Let's move on to a similar topic. And Ken, you kind of alluded to it, but I think for all of you guys who are on here, what really strikes me about your studios is the sense of community that you guys have. Tim, I've gotten to see some of your students in the way that they adore you and interact with you. Ken, I've gotten to see a whole mass ensemble of your students. Don, obviously getting to be in Massachusetts with you, I get to see that quite often. And Bobby, I remember having like an amazing Tex-Mex meal with you and your students and some of their parents. And it's just the sweetest thing to be able to see these kids and how much they respect you guys. But talking about community in your studio, how do you facilitate that? How do you show your students that that's another part that's so integral and so important to it and what makes the most difference in their lives?
Well, I'd like to jump on that right away because I've always thought that, you know, there are kids who are, you know, I was a football player in high school and I was also in the band and I was on the chess team and I was in the drama, you know, sang in the choir. I did all these things. I was like very well-rounded, I guess. And I you know, but I saw that in the band, there were kids there for whom the band was like the only thing where they felt like they fit and they belonged, you know. I could kind of maneuver between the football players and then I could maneuver over and hang out with my chess nerd friends and so on and so forth. But, you know, the band kids are a special group of kids. And there's a lot of kids in my studio that are this is their thing. This is like their only thing. And so I think it's really important that they develop good relationships. I try to stay out of, believe it or not, I try not to be like the head guru all the time, where all fun and activities flow through me. I try to make sure that they have opportunities to, you know, to hang out with each other to play music together. We have duet books and quartet books that the kids can grab. If I ever see them in the hallway, I'm like, why aren't you out there playing something? Go put an ensemble together. And so I think that's part of developing a good community, is kind of staying out of the way and putting good kids together, you know, and letting them have fun. So
that's awesome. And Ken, what about you?
Well, we do a lot of things to foster community. First of all, it starts with the parents. I make sure all the parents know each other. And we actually have, often in the summer, not this summer, unfortunately, a parents' cookout where the students aren't allowed to come. We have a recital every year, and the parents prepare the reception. And then all of my students, the older students, have practice buddies, so younger students, where they have to go over and practice an hour a week with those students. We have, everyone has to participate in choir. We take at least 4 road trips a year. We've been out to Merritt a couple of times now, which has been fun. Been to Eastman, we've been to Cleveland, we've gone several places. They perform all the time. We have 6 master classes a year where the kids have, every single one has to stand up and perform in front of each other, and they have to root each other on. And then we have a boot camp in the summer. They form ensembles together. And what's amazing is, and I'm sure that you other teachers have experienced this, when I get a Christmas card at the end of the year, they say, "You've been an incredible teacher and second father to me." And very few teachers get that close and connected to their kids. And I think it's incredibly important. But with that power comes huge responsibility that you deliver, that you invest. But that community is what creates, you know, I think elevates the studio. This last year I would have had, 5 kids at Brevard and 4 kids at Interlochen and 2 kids at Tanglewood, and a bunch I've had at NYO every single year, and I've got now, you know, multiple people at Juilliard and at Northwestern and at NEC, and they all seek each other out, and at Michigan and Jacobs, they seek each other out. And they always come back and play for me. They're always invited to come back and play. So that community makes it, makes a big deal. And then the one other thing I want to mention, and this is controversial, I know, because I put it up there, and that is, I encourage every kid, no matter what talent level or ability level, that if they want to go into music, go ahead and apply for a performance in school. And that is, because when they get there, they're pretty soon going to figure out whether they're going to make it. But for me to ever tell a kid not to follow their passion, I think is a crime. And the second thing is, I've got kids who I know have gone off to law school, or one's a nuclear physicist, who got $80,000 worth of their college tuition paid for because they did their undergraduate studies in music. And it's really great to get out of college without a lot of debt.
Yeah.
So we push all the way into college that you chase your dream and you'll figure it out on the way.
Yeah, especially if they have great mentors along the way to be able to ask questions and kind of stay connected. Because I'm sure for all of you, when somebody's a student and you're done teaching them, you're never really quite done teaching them. So, Bobby, what about you and your cohorts?
I wanted to kind of tag on what Ken said. You know, I chose, you know, to be at the junior high level my entire career, just because I feel starting the students correctly, of which I did not exactly start correctly myself, is so important to set them on the path. But a big thing for us, at least in our community, is once they leave our campus and they move on to the high school program, we're not done with them. Many teachers, math, science, you know, other, you know, academic teachers, they have them for a year, poof, they're gone. They'll see them on campus, but once they're out of the campus, that's it. For us, we have the blessing to start them, and when they move on to the next level of a program, still be in association with them and still guide them, still be there for them. Not their actual band director, but we're still their teacher. Then when they move on to college, we're still in their life. We're still there to answer questions. They call you. And like he was saying, when a student reaches out to you when they are far beyond your teaching scope, and they say, "Hey, Mr. Guess, I just got married. I want to let you know we just had our first child. I just got a job doing this, then you know you've truly made an impact on that child's life or that human being's life, because they are invested in keeping in contact with you. And when students see that their teachers are in contact, then students are in contact with each other. So you're showing by example, leading by example to those people that, yeah, it's a competitive world, but there's more than competition. We're all in this together. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we're having some problems with Dawn's sound. So we're gonna try to get that back online and see how that goes. I'm sure he's got lots to add at the moment, but we'll keep going for now. I want to get to a question that Ray wrote in, and maybe we'll start to segue into some other like tips and suggestions for students at this point. We've covered some great ground about teachers themselves teaching, but let's get to some questions that some players might have. Ray was wondering, when would you recommend a student switch to bass trombone? At what point in their trombone journey? Is that appropriate?
I'd be happy to jump on that one.
Yeah, Tim, go for it.
No, I mean, some of it has to do with physical size. I think whenever the desire is there, and also, but also there's just a particular sound quality that certain students have and the ability to play. I think sometimes people put kids who have easily fixable embouchure problems on bass trombone because they're struggling with high range. And so they say, oh, let's just get them down here. That's not, bass trombone is trombone first, bass trombone second, both, I'm a tenor trombone player, and both the bass trombone of the National Youth Orchestra and the NYO2 this year are my students. And the reason for that is because I teach them to be trombone players first and foremost. I switched one of them when they were in 7th grade because they were desperate, and they really wanted to play in the low range, and they had a really big sound. And then I have another kid who actually changed after he had braces freshman, sophomore, junior year, and just struggled with his braces. And we kept thinking about this glorious day when the braces were going to come off and his range would improve. And those braces came off last summer, and he really struggled. He lost a lot more range. And so I was like, well, it's going to be tough for you to take some auditions at some of the schools that you're thinking of for college. You can't play bolero right now. So you want to try and play some bass trombone? And it felt like kind of a retreat for me, because it was like, that's what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to say that it's a failure or whatever. And so we got on bass trombone, and that kid just got a full tuition scholarship to Michigan. He's still in there in the MYO2, and he started bass trombone last summer. So I guess when a student really wants to do it, and if they have the right attitude towards it and really want to take it not as a fallback position.
Wow. Yeah. Bobby, as the resident bass trombonist here.
Well, I can tell you this, just so I don't ensue a riot here. In our part of the Houston area, there's a very wide range of ideas on bass trombone. I switch students to bass trombone in the junior high if I feel like they're physically ready. We do, our pedals are part of our, daily routine when we start in our trombone class, and I can tell right away who's going to be successful in that, who's using the right amount of air to encompass that kind of instrument, etc. I've taught in places where bass trombone was accepted in the junior high, and we took the tenor trombone music and dropped it to 4th for tryouts so that those kids had an opportunity. The current region I work in right now, we do not do that. So the bass trombone kids just play, the tenor trombone music at tryouts. But I really think a bass trombone kid has a certain mentality, and you can just pick up on that. If they're coming in every day and they're like, Mr. Guess, you got to hear my pedal A flat, and they're just like laying on it. Well, that kid has a mindset that they are engulfed and encompassed in that register. So that doesn't mean they're going to be successful, but I'm all about giving them opportunity. So we switch kids to bass clarinet, we switch kids to bass sax, we switch kids to, certain things in junior high. So, taking on what he said, if they're physically able and they you give them a shot and they're demonstrating that everything is working correctly, absolutely. I do know some directors that take their absolute best tenor trombone player and put them on bass trombone. Different schools of thought. Very good buddy of mine, Scott Thornton, who plays out in San Francisco, is an example of that. We went to college together, and he was, the absolute top tenor trombone in his junior high, and they put him on bass trombone. It's fantastic. So it's really boils down to the kid, their mentality. Are they physically suited? Because if you give them a bass trombone and they start leaning over like this, well, then that's probably going to be a problem. So anyway.
Ken, do you have anything to add on that? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little different for me. I don't really think in the modern day of trombone playing that you can be either one exclusively.
Great.
I think everything that comes up requires you to be able to jump on the bottom part, the top part, or the middle part, and you have to be good at all of them. I agree with Bobby that a lot of it is personality based, and you can listen to kids when they come in. Some of them are blowing, what we call whale slaps down in the bottom register because they just love to hang out down there. And then the other ones are playing, notes that only my dog Skipper can hear, and what their attitudes are, and they kind of find their way. But much of it happens in my studio based on competition. You get somebody who says, I really want to advance, but there are too many tenor players ahead of me. If I want to get into those orchestra spots, I'm going to try and get there on bass trombone. And they'll make the election to make the change, but we hold our bass trombone players to high B flats, C's and D's, and we hold our tenor players to double pedal B flats because I think you got to play it all, and you got to play all styles. You can't really just be one or the other.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, Don, you want to test your audio, see how you're working out?
It's working perfectly.
I got a funny little thing here, which is my daughter was in 5th grade, literally the littlest kid ever to move to bass trombone. But my son is 2 years older, and he's a really outstanding tenor player, and she just did not want to compare herself to him. She came to me and said, Dad, I don't want to compare myself. And I said, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, he's older. And she says, I want to play bass trombone. Luckily, she has my genetics, and she's a large individual, and she was able to hold the bass. But she's probably the youngest kid I've ever seen on bass trombone. And now she's studying with Ken Wolff now because, I don't want to teach my kids, but but he's doing a great job with her. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's wonderful.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
So I'm going to
type me a question, and when there's a pause in the action, then I can speak. Well, okay, all is not lost.
Good thing I'm a fast typer. Let's see. So our question, and we'll have Dawn start it off. Apologies if there's typos. What are a few important things that aspiring trombonists should focus on during this time? Obviously, it's a unique situation with COVID and schools being out and online lessons and stuff. But Dawn, what are some suggestions for students during difficult COVID times? Let's see what Professor has to say.
Well, I actually wrote down some notes. I have done a fair amount of teaching of beginning students, and then teaching school students who are in junior high and in high school. And then at the college level, I get a fair amount of high school, undergraduate, and graduate students who come by for lessons. And I have 2 regular students that are in high school that are doing very, very well. I don't want to tread on what I'd already taught in our VidCon session, but I believe that most classroom teaching of trombone and brass instruments have taught by information leading the way. Do this with your tongue, do this with your air, do this with your hand, do this with your slide. And I think that the ear should lead the way. So you guys long since do this and teach it, with your students. But I think the majority of the people are telling them, learning the information, telling themselves what to do with the information, and thereby, sort of Arnold Jacobs short-circuiting how the body works, that the mind's ear, the brain conceives that, and then the body does it. The more we kind of do that, I think we get more and more of a disconnect. It is my own belief that when that gets really to be a problem, that's a lot to do with so many people getting focal dystonia. The more that we can play by ear. So I think to teach the students to listen a lot, and certainly some of that is by example that we play and they hear that. But I'm not afraid of the students, particularly when they're younger, to listen to lots of different recordings. I know some teachers are afraid they'll be influenced by that one style, but as they grow musically, they'll start to make their own musical choices the more they learn about music. But they'll learn about pitch, they'll learn about style. So if they really, really listen repeatedly, then they can start to hear it in their head before they play it. And that's directing things. So if they can listen, they can hear it. Then they can sing it and reinforce that, and sing it, buzz it, play it. Not all students are the same. So involving the buzzing aspect, you take the necessary steps with that particular person. Playing the subdivision about 8 to 10 years ago changed my teaching life. Because a question I always wanted to ask when I was being yelled at, Lucas, subdivide, Lucas, subdivide. And the 2 times out of a million that I actually was subdividing, I wanted to say, how can I subdivide easier and more even in my head without having to struggle so much? And one of the ways that's helped that a lot is just playing something. If it's dum 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 da 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 da, that'll teach of your subdivision being louder and more even. It'll start to teach that the slide has to move in rhythm and stay full duration and then go exactly in rhythm. And I like what Chris Holding says, that the tongue is the brain's agent for rhythm. And then if the slide is exactly with the rhythm. I also like what Scott Hartman says, that the aperture changes when the rhythm changes, et cetera, et cetera. But there's so many benefits. You can learn tied rhythms on and on and on and on. I'm going to get off of that because I think I've really kind of stressed that a lot. Another thing is that if we play lip slurs, arpeggios, and scales, play them from the bottom and also from the top coming down and returning. If we balance that out, then that will really help. As trombone players, and I think a lot of other instrumentalists, we've played from the bottom, we've gone up exclusively. Therefore, if we get too big on the bottom, we have trouble making an even transition. If we learn to play the top note and come down and return, the transition irons itself out. Also, tongue over the partials, not ta da 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 da, which is great, and other forms of that. Da 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 da, it's great. But how about da 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 da, both directions, da 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 da. There's a great book by Ernst Gatke, which Karsten Svanberg, the trombonist, Danish trombonist, 32.
Hey, Don, can you hear us?
Tongue over the partials.
No.
Okay. So the question was about COVID-19 and the time that we're dealing with. I would say this to the students who are listening, that there are rarely times in your life when you get this kind of time. I know Sam and I were talking before this started about the time that we've been able to spend with our children. For those of you who don't have children, this is a great time to spend extra time on your heart. I think there's 2 kinds of students in this time right now, which is there's the ones who are going to give up because they don't have people to play with and they don't have the ensembles and everything else. And I think that there are also kids who are going to say, I'm going to come out of this much stronger and better. Right. So that would be what I think. I think be the latter.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Hey, Ken, you were going to say something too.
Yeah. So this came out, and I actually heard George Kern repeat it too. And I know this came from my teacher, Dave Sporn. He said, if you take 26 lessons a year from your college teacher, over the course of 4 years, you're going to have less than 1 week's time with that teacher, which means that you really have to figure out what to do when you're practicing and what to do when you're working on things and what goals to set for yourself. And you can't rely on your teacher.
Right.
Just because you're stuck at home now is no excuse for you to say, don't know what to work on now. Right. Just take the guidance you took from your teacher. And the second thing is specific to that question, about knowing what to work on. One of the things that I've seen from teachers that I think can be dangerous is that they have their gimmick. They have their, well, if you flutter tongue, it fixes everything, or not take anything away from what you said, Don, but subdivision isn't the answer to everything, right? That they don't always go with the one thing that they think is the magic bullet. Communicating with the students and saying it 900 times, and I don't mind saying it 899 times, and Tim says it the 900th time and the kid finally gets it. But you need multiple ways to approach every problem, and there's no specific answer, and everyone's individual, and it has to be treated that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you got to know what to work on. You don't have that much time with your teacher. Figure it out and set your own goals, man. Do not rely on someone telling you what it is you need to do.
Yeah. Bobby.
When this started, I visited with my students and I said, this is a great time. No concerts, no pressing this, no pressing that, no auditions right now. What a great time to get off the page and just enjoy playing your instrument, because we all started doing this at some point because it looked fun. And I think sometimes we manufacture those kids and we push them and we push them. I know that we do. We want the absolute best out of our students, but I want them to not ever lose the joy of playing their instrument.
Yeah.
And this has been a great time, at least for my students, to get off the page and play some things that are fun, what they enjoy. I could really care less if they're copying pop tunes. They're working on sound production, they're working on ear training. As long as they're enjoying and they're putting it on their face, then when we get to see each other again, we can, evaluate where we're at, and we can go from that point. But I know I was one of those students where I liked playing the trombone, but I hated practicing, and part of that was I didn't know how to practice. Nobody had taught me what practice is, but I enjoyed playing the horn. I just didn't enjoy practicing. And so for me, with my students, I want them to take this time to get back to just enjoy playing it. And I could really care less what they're playing. I just want them to enjoy the instrument.
Yeah. So just a really quick thing, because I have another question I'd love to get to. Can you each let us know what maybe one of your favorite books to have students work out of is? Let me just, let's go down the line, and then I'll grab Don at the end, but just like one or two books that you think are really important for maybe middle school to high school age trombone players.
Well, I think with younger kids, I really like the first book of Practical Studies and Vandercook I think those are classic books before they begin things like Fink studies and Bordonis and things like that. Walter Beeler, you can find some good tunes in there and stuff like that. I have this whole system of books that kids work their way through. Be happy to share it at some point.
Awesome. That's very cool. Ken?
I think this is an important question because nobody learns to play trombone from studying solos. We learn to play trombone in etude books. And so I'm not so hung up on which the books are, although in our studio we use Fink and Bordoni for vocalises, we use Blazevich for rhythmic studies, we use Bloom for technical studies, and we use Arbin for everything else. And then we expand from there. But you need to have something that's a vocalise or lyrical style playing, something that's a technical or staccato studies or separated studies. You need something that focuses on rhythm and teaches clefs. And then you need something that focuses on rudiments and patterns and scalar patterns and all the little technical things we need, like double, triple tonguing, gruppetto, and those. And I've never found a book better than Arbin, but I don't really care. What I care is that there's each one of these styles addressed to make a well-rounded.
Right.
Well, and then I'd like to add that I work with my students a little bit on improvising and reading some jazz duets too, and making sure that they're expanding their horizons, because being a trombone player does no longer mean being an orchestral player. It means being an everything player. Survival.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of
Bobby.
time.
Okay, I
I
didn't
know
know.
this is some dry stuff, Sam.
No, it's good.
Look at that. No, this is,
No.
let's talk about what books we use. We're going to put everyone who's still
At
listening
this
to
point,
wait a minute.
no,
completely
because
asleep.
I know that we've got students who want to know from you guys.
We all need to pay homage to Brad Edwards and his.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Great
Gotta
stuff.
give him a shout out. So
Yeah. And Bobby, do you have like a top one or two?
Yeah, I do. I like, any kind of vocalese. The Roches, for my younger students, I will actually take them and change them into different keys that are a little bit more suited for their development. I don't want them playing incorrectly just to get G or A or whatever. And also, recently, I used this saxophone book, KLOSE, and it's challenging on saxophone, but it lays right in the money, like the meat register for trombone. And it's very much like an Arbans or a Coproche style, but it's just different. And,
That's cool.
the tried and true war horses of the years, absolutely. But I'm a person of variety, and sometimes after 25 years of Arbans, I need something that is Arbans, but it's not Arbans, something different. Because if I'm stale, then I'm going to be a stale teacher to my students. So I need some variety here or there. So I will find that in a different instrument or a different book.
Cool. So I'm going to queue up Don. So Don, do you want to give us your favorite two books for middle to high school students? And we'll see what Professor Lucas has to say. He just wrote a whole list of all of his favorites.
First of all, I'd like to say this is the front line, and there's a handful of others out there that are the front line at teaching the young students, getting them started right, guiding them right. I'm not in an ivory castle here at the college level. We're all on the same team, and I have the utmost respect for you. I listed here just actually 4 different books. One of them, the 55 Phrasing Etudes or Studies by Jaroslav Chimera. I studied with a teacher in Virginia, and Key Garvin, and he'd studied with him, and he called him Jerry. From England, Bill Richardson's Playing Legato, and he has different type of legato slurs, etudes only on the same partial, over the partials, where you stay in the position and then you move it sort of against the grain. And there's a guy who teaches young students in England, Adrian Taylor, and he has a book, Simple Studies on Trombone Technique. And Gerald Bordner, the last group I'll mention, first and second book of Practical Studies. It's by Hal Leonard. And years ago, when I needed something to audition junior high students for our Tech band camp, I was looking for an etude that had something other than 1 flat, 2 flats, maybe 3 flats, or no flats or sharps, and also had tongue notes and slurred notes. My goodness, and there was hardly anything then. And these books I've used, I started a student on them, and I've had countless others that have used them, and they've been really great.
Thank you. So my last question for our panel, and I'd love if everybody could weigh in, but this is a little bit abstract, but what are some of the most important lessons or ideas that you want your students to learn from you? Be it trombone or life or anything. What do you want somebody to walk away from your studio after however many years of study learning?
I want them to be good people and to have drive and to try and achieve whatever they want. And also, again, delayed gratification. I think that's important. The most important thing for kids to learn. Working hard for a very long time for an outcome that's not guaranteed will set them up for life very well, because that's what life is. Life is no guarantee, but if you work hard and you keep after something, and also to follow their passions, I think we're too rooted in having students feel like they have to produce immediately. They have to get out of college and get a job. And I think there's a lot to be said for following your passions just as a person. I was always encouraged to do that, and I see that in my students all the time. But when they don't go into music, they're amazing at whatever it is they pick.
Right. Absolutely, 100%. Ken, what about you?
it's a lot more fun if you love it, and it's a lot easier to love when you get better.
Yeah.
The second thing is that, there's a great quote. I go again back to my teacher, Dave Sporney, who says that there's so many players that I've seen, he's seen, and we've all seen, that incredible talent to make incredible careers, yet they find themselves being invited to fewer and fewer musical situations only because they're offending their colleagues and behaving with poor
Great point.
citizenship, not prepared, not showing up on time, not dressing appropriately for an audition or even a lesson, and criticizing others. And they're going to often find out before it's going to be too late that they lost an opportunity for something they could have done that they had loved because they had attitude. And then finally, that perfection is a journey, not a destination. And everybody wants to get there a lot faster than we can get there. So I tell them it's like going through a tube of toothpaste. You get through the first 4/5 of that tube in 2 months, and then you'll spend another 9 months squeezing out the rest of that tube before you throw it away. And that's kind of what it's like getting good. And you just got to stick with it, because it's every time you get another brushing out of it, it's incredibly satisfying.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Bobby, what about you? Let's go to you next, Bobby.
I hope for my students, like Tim said, delayed gratification, to work toward a goal. One of the stories I use with my kids is, and probably not a good story to say right now, but it's okay to fail. We've all learned from failures. And if you fail once, it doesn't mean that you throw the towel in. And, a job interview, if 500 people apply for a job, 499 people go home not very happy. And that's life. And you have to encompass that and learn to deal with that. Failure is okay. So many times I have students fail once, they're done. Part of that is the parents want them to graduate Harvard in 7th grade, and we know that that's not realistic. But it's okay. And like I said, what Tim was saying, delayed gratification, and and Kim, to work toward a goal that once you work to the satisfaction of, I made it to that point, is pounds of gold more than, I just did it on a whim and now I'm done. So.
Right. No, that's awesome. So let's, so Don, you're up.
Wow, this could be hours in answering, so I will be as succinct as possible. If it was a younger student, have a good sound to learn rhythm, differences of articulation, note length, etc. At the college level, most of the music is not on the page. Like Pablo Casals said, it's poor pen and paper music. So what's in your mind that you're going to make it musical, and what are some of the tangible things of being musical? Direction of line, going somewhere, coming away from somewhere, style, color, and if it's not in your mind, like Arnold Jacobs said, that we'll transpose it, the trombone in your mind, then you're not going to be able to do it. If you have that idea in your mind, then that can direct you to do those things. Diversity of style, not sounding the same on everything.
Awesome.
Even in solos, we have all kinds of different solos. When you get to the hindemith, you're largely playing orchestrally on the hindemith solo. When you're in the orchestra, you've got all kinds of different styles. I talked to someone recently, and he laughed and he said, yeah, that's because this trombonist sounds like they're playing a solo in the orchestra when they play. And then this trombonist sounds like they're playing in the orchestra when they're playing their solo. So we all have fallen into those traps. We got to change gears, and we got to have that in our mind first, and the ear leads the way.
Love it.
Sam?
Yes.
I get about 15 seconds to say something that feels really important for teachers and students.
Please.
Well, my daughter just graduated from University of Wisconsin, and I remember that I went to the parent orientation, and they asked the parents there who were whether they were afraid of the choice their children made for their undergraduate degree. And a lot of them said, yes, my kid's studying Japanese literature, my kid's studying Yugoslavian underwater basket weaving, and I don't know what they're going to do with that. And so they said, I'd like for you to see what the top 7 undergraduate majors are for medical school, law school, and an MBA, and music was up there. And it was surprising to all of us. And you know, it came to my attention that if you go to school to study accounting, you get there and say, teach me accounting, or engineering, teach me engineering, or nursing, teach me nursing. But if you want to get in a BU, you pretty much have to know how to play the trombone before he'll consider admitting you into his program. And it takes a special type of individual to be able to have that kind of discipline pre-collegiate years,
Right.
to get to mastering, almost mastering something. And every employer in every job in the world appreciates that. As a matter of fact, it was at Alan Greenspan at a
Saxophone
undergraduate
at Juilliard.
degree in saxophone at Juilliard performance, right? So just because you pursue this does not mean that it cuts off your options later on in life, and it does not. It actually enhances them.
It's a great point. It's so true, and it's a joy to be able to celebrate music as a student throughout your whole journey. If you decide to pursue it as a major later on, that's wonderful. But there are so many people who find joy still in music, even if it's not the primary source of income. There's so many people that get to share in music in so many different ways.
They might enjoy it more.
And it's totally true. They might enjoy it more. It's a really great point. I'm just floored at this panel. This has been a total blast. I'm going to just thank you guys so much for being a part of this incredible discussion. I think we covered a lot of great stuff. There's a million more topics and questions that we could cover. And I think that's the role of the teacher, just to always be there to answer questions. I will say that I did link information for all of our panelists in the comment section. So if you want to learn more about each of these great trombone players and teachers, feel free to check out their bios. There's a Facebook or an email or contact information for them. If you have a question you'd like for us to pass along to them, you can always email us at info@seshires.com. But it's been such a blast to get to spend time with you guys tonight. Thank you for joining. And we'll be continuing to bring you more content on Shires TV. The next episode will be next Thursday. Stay tuned for information about that. If you have anything you'd like to see on Shires TV, feel free to shoot us an email or comment on Facebook or send us a message. We're going to continue to bring great roundtable discussions and masterclasses. With the factory just starting to open up, I think it'll be really fun. We'll be able to do a shop tour and also some instrument fitting kind of examples too. So I think we'll be able to get to some pretty neat stuff in the coming weeks. But again, thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you to our panelists for being so amazing. And we'll see you next time on Shires TV. So thank you guys. Bye, Don. Bye-bye.